Hi, my name is Joseph Prince-Potter, and this is my aquaculture presentation. So aquaculture is pretty much the rearing of aquatic animals or the cultivation of aquatic plants for food. So pretty much just, do like farm fish for food. That's pretty much what it is, or plants. Intensive aquaculture is the intervention in the growing process, such as with supplemental feeding and water aeration. And extensive aquaculture allows the stock to grow on its own using natural food sources and conditions. So, there are some pros and cons to aquaculture as a whole, such as the pros being it's a source of food for people, source of income for people. There's flexibility, like it can be built on any type of land or like just in a body of water, pretty much, and you can recirculate the aquaculture systems to create lower waste. Now, there are also cons of aquaculture as a whole, such as like there's concentrated waste in like one area plus uneaten fish pellets, which leads to a lot of pollution in that water, which could pollutes the water and like smothers plants so they can't breathe. And then there's diseases that can also spread to other fish. There's chemicals released into the water because they need chemicals for a successful harvest. And there's also some fish can escape in these processes, and that causes invasive species to be moved into a new area. And also some mangroves farm, depending on where they place the aquaculture system, can be cut down due to this. So some pros of intensive aquaculture is that it promotes growth because they're feeding them and getting them fat. They're easy to manage also because like they just need to be kept there and like fed, and can also be yearly because like there's not like a specific time this needs to be done. But too many nutrients are released into the water that's being used because they're overfeeding the fish. Like they put in a lot of food to feed the fish, which is not always the best thing, and that can also create a lot of waste. So there's a lot of waste everywhere. And then there's also and then for pros of extensive aquaculture, there is less effort to be put in because it's more natural, so there's more space to put it, so like you already have like less effort and it's more natural, so like amazing. But you can destroy the mangroves and surrounding area, as I said before. Like it really depends on the surrounding area, and like you destroy it a lot. And also the natural habitats, as I just said, are destroyed. And there's also less oxygen due to phytoplankton and other types of plankton being in that area. So fish are killed because they don't have enough oxygen for them. So some ways to get rid of all these cons is they can be put on the inland, so people don't need to be destroying all these natural habitats because they can make their own, which might cost more, but can be super helpful to the environment because you're not destroying all these mangroves. There's also less overfishing, which is a pro. Should have said that before, but there's less overfishing, so it's better. So the oceans are getting filled again with their natural fish because they're able to reproduce without any invasive species or getting overfished in their way. No competition, and there's new methods to protect these wild fish and these wild areas, such as like as I said, moving them to the inland, and also like recirculation tanks to get rid of that waste. It just recirculates what's already going through that aquaculture tank rather than making a new aquaculture tank or like getting new nutrients in there. For grouper, they use intensive fishing where they put the fish on a diet, and they take the brood stock of 2 to 6 years old, and then they separate the males and the females. The males should be 2 to 3 years old, and the females should be 4 to 6 years old, which is prime time for reproduction. And then, so pretty much they go through that reproduction stage and spawn about 6,000 to 10,000 eggs per liter. And then they grow the fish, and then when they are post-larva, they are put on a diet, and then they are put in tanks for 8 to 10 months. And then they're put in an intensive fatting farm where they just pretty much get fatter and fatter till it gets to about 350 to 400 grams, which is 8 to 12 months old. And that is where they sell that's where they put the fish on the market. For tuna, they use intensive aquaculture. They do this by domesticating the tuna, and then once they're domesticated, once they are old enough also, they get fed artificial food to grow more, and then after they are grown more and fattened up, they are put into the market. So shrimp is a form of intensive aquaculture, and so pretty much they get captured, and then the broodstock is taken, and the egg-carrying females are obtained from that broodstock, and they reproduce and get larvae, and then the larva is put in, from larva to metamorphosis stage, they are put in a hatchery tank. They usually use a flow-through or recirculation system, and they are put into a nursery tank to grow out after their past larva stage, and then they go into a grow pond where they grow up and grow out, and then the prawns are harvested from there, and then they're put into a broodstock where the whole cycle restarts. In conclusion, aquaculture is very important because if done right, you do not hurt the wildlife or the natural habitat of the fish. You also have more availability of clean water and can get more food and lower the market demand with more fish that you have access to, and you also have better access to the market while making a return on the investment that you put into aquaculture. If disease management is done right, you can also lower the amount of dead fish due to the aquaculture recirculation processes that they have and you can also get rid of all this waste and unneeded food, and the availability of location can get opened up if we use more on-land sites rather than places where you destroy the natural habitat.